I was 39 when I learned that the man I had loved for half my life was capable of burning down the world we had built together. My name is Kimberly, and for years I had believed that loyalty, hard work, and love could keep a marriage intact. Daniel and I met in law school, built careers side by side, and eventually purchased a house on the beach, our little sanctuary where the noise of the world faded and the ocean seemed to wash away every trouble. At least that's what I thought. The truth came to me in fragments at first, like shards of glass catching the light. A strange perfume on his shirt. Business trips that didn't line up with the calendar. A sudden eagerness to spend weekends working while I stayed behind. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid that the stress of my job was making me suspicious. But deep down, I think my soul already knew. The confirmation came on a rainy Wednesday. Daniel had left his phone on the counter while showering, and a message flashed across the screen. I don't know what possessed me, but I picked it up. The words glared at me like flames. Can't wait to be back at the beach house with you. I'll bring the wine. You bring yourself. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. The sender's name was Emily, our neighbor, our so-called friend, the woman who had toasted my birthday at our dining table 2 months earlier. I scrolled further. The texts were explicit, shameless. They reminisced about nights spent tangled in sheets I had picked out, about whispered promises under the same roof where I had believed we were safe. And worst of all, they spoke of returning to our beach house, the sanctuary that held every memory of our marriage. I don't remember setting the phone down, only the roaring in my ears and the way my chest felt like it was collapsing. Betrayal is not just a wound, it's a suffocation. It steals your breath before it steals your trust. That night I stared at Daniel across the dinner table. He smiled casually, asked about my day, completely unaware that I now saw him differently. It took everything in me not to scream, not to hurl the phone at his face and demand answers. But as I chewed my food mechanically, another thought crystallized, sharp and cold. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of a private confrontation. I wouldn't let Emily hide behind her painted smile and soft lies. If they wanted to turn my marriage into a theater of deceit, then I would turn their play into a stage of truth. The next morning I called Alex, Emily's husband. My hands trembled as I told him what I had found, expecting denial, expecting him to hang up. Instead, silence stretched on the line, followed by a hollow laugh. I knew, he said, finally, his voice ragged. Not everything, but enough. I just didn't want to face it. We agreed to meet. Sitting across from him at a small cafe, I showed him the text, the proof. His face crumpled, but his eyes hardened. They've been using your beach house, he asked, disbelief dripping from his tone. Yes, I whispered. Our sanctuary. That was when Alex leaned forward, his voice low. Then let's take it back. Together. And so the plan was born. We decided not to confront them in anger, not to scream or fight. Instead, we would wait. We would be at the beach house before they arrived, sitting in the very place they thought was theirs to desecrate. And we would let them walk right into their own ruin. For the next week, I lived two lives. By day, I went to work, smiled at colleagues, and came home to Daniel's half-hearted affection. By night, I planned in secret, packing a bag for the beach house, rehearsing the words I would say when the moment came. Every glance he gave me, every kiss goodnight, only fueled my resolve. The day arrived with skies clear and blue, mocking me with their brightness. Alex and I drove separately, but we arrived within minutes of each other. The beach house stood proud against the shoreline, its windows glinting in the sun. My stomach twisted as I unlocked the door, memories flooding me, our anniversaries, the nights by the fire, the laughter echoing in those walls, all poisoned now. And inside, I felt the air thicken with the weight of what was coming. Alex sat at the kitchen table, his hands clasped tightly, his jaw set in grim determination. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture, steadying myself. Soon Daniel and Emily would walk through that door, expecting stolen intimacy. Instead, they would find the two people they had betrayed waiting for them. The ocean outside roared, waves crashing against the shore, as if echoing the storm inside me. I stood by the window, watching the horizon, my pulse steady now. For the first time since discovering the affair, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready, because tonight their lies would meet the light. We didn't have to wait long. The beach house was far enough from the city that visitors were rare on weekdays, but as the sun dipped lower, I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. My body stiffened. Alex looked up from his spot at the table, his face tightening with something between fury and dread. Headlights cut through the windows, sweeping across the living room walls where Daniel and I had once curled up with glasses of wine watching old movies. My heart ached for those memories, but I pushed the grief down. There was no room for it tonight. Tonight was about truth. The car door slammed, followed by laughter light, carefree, the kind of laughter that once belonged to me and Daniel alone. Emily's voice drifted in, muffled but unmistakable. "I can't believe no one suspects a thing." Daniel chuckled low and satisfied. Alex's jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. I placed a hand on his arm, not to comfort him, because nothing could but to steady both of us. The doorknob rattled, the key turned, and then the door swung open. Daniel stepped in first, carrying a bottle of red wine. Emily followed, her hand brushing his arm, her smile smug, radiant with stolen joy. They froze when they saw us. The silence was deafening. Daniel's face went pale, his mouth opening but no words forming. Emily dropped her purse, the thud echoing in the still air. I rose from my chair, my voice calm, measured. "Welcome home." Daniel blinked, his confusion giving way to panic. "Kimberly, what are you—" Don't I cut him off? "Not tonight. You've already said enough in your texts." Every word burned into my memory. Every lie, every laugh you shared at my expense. Emily took a step back, bumping into the doorframe, her breath quickening. Alex stood now too, his presence looming, his eyes fixed on her. "Emily," he said, his tone low and steady. "How long?" Her lips trembled. "Alex, how long?" His voice thundered, rattling the windows. She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Months," she whispered, "since last summer." The room seemed to contract around us. I felt the walls closing and the weight of every memory pressing down. Daniel tried to step forward, his hands raised as if to placate me. "Kimberly, it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "A mistake." My laugh was bitter, hollow. "You called it unforgettable. You planned weekends, nights, entire lies around it. Do you know what it feels like to read your husband describe another woman as his escape?" His face crumpled, but I wasn't done. I pointed to the bottle in his hand. Was that for her? The wine we used to drink by the fire. The rituals that were ours, you handed them over to her like they meant nothing. Emily sobbed quietly now, while Alex's hands curled into fists at his sides. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might lunge at Daniel, but instead he exhaled sharply and shook his head. "You don't deserve my rage," he muttered. "You deserve each other." Daniel's eyes darted between me and Alex, desperate, pleading. "Please, Kimberly, we can work this out. Don't throw away everything we've built." The irony stung. He had already thrown it away piece by piece every time he crept into Emily's arms. "I'm not throwing anything," I said quietly. "I'm saving myself from drowning in your lies." The waves outside crashed louder, as though the ocean itself bore witness to the unraveling. Emily reached for Daniel's hand, but he yanked it away, shame painted across his features. For the first time, I saw them both clearly, not as powerful figures who had stolen my happiness, but as small, weak people hiding behind each other. I turned to Alex. His face was etched with pain, but there was strength there too, a resolve that matched my own. Without a word, he nodded. It was time to end this scene, to reclaim the space they had desecrated. I walked to the door, pulling it wide open. The night air rushed in cool and sharp. "Get out," I told them. "Both of you. Leave this house, leave me, leave everything you destroyed." Daniel hesitated, his lips parting, but one look at my face silenced him. Emily grasped his arm, tugging him toward the door, her sobs filling the night as they stumbled into the darkness. The house was quiet again, except for the pounding of my heart. Alex sat heavily at the table, burying his face in his hands. I remained standing, staring out at the ocean, the moonlight silvering the waves. I had thought this confrontation would break me. Instead, it gave me something unexpected: clarity. The marriage I had fought for was already gone. Now the only question that remained was what I would build from its ashes. The silence after they left was suffocating. The door slammed behind them and their footsteps faded into the night, but the echoes of their betrayal lingered in every corner of the beach house. The walls, once filled with laughter and warmth, now carried the residue of deceit. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring out at the moonlit waves, feeling both emptied and overwhelmed. Behind me, Alex exhaled shakily, dragging his hands down his face. God, he muttered, his voice thick. I wanted to kill him. I turned to him slowly. His eyes were red, glistening with unshed tears, but beneath the grief was a strength I recognized, the same strength I had just found in myself. We were two wounded souls caught in the same storm, tethered not by love but by betrayal. I know, I whispered. So did I. We sat down at the kitchen table, the bottle of wine still there unopened. I stared at it bitterly. That bottle was supposed to be their celebration, their secret indulgence in my house. Now it was nothing more than evidence. I reached for it, twisted the corkscrew, and poured 2 glasses. To survival, I said, raising mine. Alex's lips twisted into a humorless smile as he lifted his. To survival. The wine burned down my throat, heavy and bitter. For a while, we didn't speak. The waves outside crashed in their steady rhythm, filling the silence between us. My mind replayed every moment of the evening, Daniel's pale face, Emily's trembling lips, the way the truth had gutted them both. I thought I'd feel triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, as though I'd won nothing but ashes. Alex broke the silence first. What are you going to do now? I stared into my glass, the answer already formed in my heart. Divorce him. There's nothing left to salvage. His jaw tightened. Same. Emily's been lying for months. Maybe years. I can't live in that shadow anymore. We sat there, 2 broken marriages, bleeding onto the floor of a house once built for love. And yet beneath the wreckage, I felt a strange kind of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The truth had been dragged into the light, and there was no going back. Later that night, after Alex left for his brother's place, I stayed behind. I wandered through the house, touching the furniture, the photographs, the little mementos of trips and anniversaries. Each one felt poisoned now, like relics from a life that had died without me realizing. In our bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the neatly folded blankets. I remembered Daniel and me lying there, whispering dreams about the future, promising each other forever. I had believed him then. How could I not? Love makes you blind, but betrayal rips the blindfold off with claws. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was shallow and restless, filled with dreams of ocean waves swallowing me whole. I woke at dawn, my throat tight, the salty air heavy in my lungs. For the first time, I didn't check my phone for messages from Daniel. I didn't wonder where he was. I already knew nowhere that mattered anymore. By noon, my decision was final. I drove back to the city, gathered the proof, and contacted a lawyer. Filing for divorce wasn't just about punishing Daniel, it was about saving myself from drowning in his lies. Every signature I scribbled onto paper felt like carving my way out of a cage. When I returned to the beach house the following weekend, it was empty and still. No laughter, no footsteps, no false promises, just the ocean, endless and unchanging. I stood on the deck, watching the waves crash against the shore, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Not just for what I had lost, but for the woman I had been, the one who trusted too easily, who loved without boundaries, who never saw the storm coming. The tears didn't weaken me. They cleansed me. They reminded me that I was still here, still breathing, still standing. Betrayal had broken my marriage, but it hadn't broken me. I wiped my face, inhaled deeply, and whispered to the sea, "This is the end of us, Daniel, and the beginning of me." The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, whispered gossip, and nights that seemed endless. Word spread quickly through our circle of friends and colleagues. Stories have a way of growing wings when betrayal is involved. Some people called their voices laced with pity, offering hollow reassurances. Others stayed silent, perhaps too uncomfortable to confront what had happened. But I didn't care anymore. Their opinions couldn't touch me. The only voices that mattered were my own, and the quiet roar of the ocean reminding me to keep moving forward. Daniel tried to reach me. At first, it was frantic calls and late-night knocks on my door. He left voicemails filled with apologies, excuses, desperate promises to change. He said Emily meant nothing, that it was a mistake, that we could rebuild what we had lost. But each word only revealed how little he understood. You cannot rebuild something after burning it to the ground. You cannot stitch trust back together once it has been shredded. Then his tone shifted. The pleading gave way to anger. He accused me of humiliating him, of destroying his reputation, of making him look like the villain. That was the final confirmation I needed. A man who cared more about how the world saw him than about the pain he had inflicted on his wife was not a man worth saving. Meanwhile, Alex filed his own divorce papers. Occasionally, we exchanged messages, not romantic, not even particularly warm, but filled with solidarity. He was walking his own path through the wreckage just as I was. Sometimes just knowing someone else understood the depth of this kind of betrayal was enough to steady me. The beach house, though, remained the hardest wound to face. I returned there often, standing on the deck at night, staring out at the waves. It had been our dream place, our escape, and now it carried the ghost of their laughter, the echo of their stolen moments. At first I considered selling it, leaving behind the poisoned memories, but the more I stood there breathing in the salty air, the more I realized that leaving would mean surrendering the one thing that had always been mine. They had desecrated it, yes, but it was still my sanctuary. I refused to let their betrayal define those walls. So I stayed. I scrubbed every corner, replaced the sheets, repainted the rooms. With each stroke of the brush, with every nail hammered into the wall, I reclaimed it. It was no longer our house, it was my house. A place of renewal, of healing, of rediscovering who I was without him. One evening, Olivia, my younger sister, came to stay with me at the beach house. We sat on the deck with glasses of wine, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. She reached for my hand, her eyes soft with concern. "You know," she said gently, "you're stronger than you realize. Most people would have collapsed under what you went through. But you turned it into something else." I swallowed hard, tears burning my eyes. "I don't feel strong. I feel hollow, like everything I believed in has been stripped away." She squeezed my hand. "That hollow space, that's where you get to rebuild. Not for him, for you." Her words sank deep into me. That night, as I lay in bed listening to the ocean outside, I realized she was right. Betrayal had gutted me, but in the empty spaces it left behind, I had room to grow into someone new, someone braver, someone freer, someone who no longer clung to lies just to feel safe. When the divorce was finalized, I didn't celebrate. There was no joy in signing the papers, no victory in ending what had once been love. But there was peace, a quiet, steady peace that told me I had survived. I walked down to the shoreline that evening, the sand cool beneath my feet, the tide washing over my ankles. I whispered his name once, letting the ocean carry it away. And then I turned, leaving the waves to swallow the last trace of the life we had shared. For the first time in months, I felt light. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was mine. And after everything, that was enough. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever stood on the edge of heartbreak and wondered if you'd survive, hear me now, you will. You are stronger than the lies told about you, stronger than the pain they left behind. And one day you will stand in the ruins and realize that you are still here, still breathing, still capable of love, not for them, but for yourself. So if my story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories of resilience. And leave a comment below, tell me how you found your way back from the storm. Because your voice matters, and your healing matters too.